The 49ers just got a chef's kiss of Sublime news, and it all centers around the developing story around quarterback Brock Purdy. In this video, we are talking about the developing narrative around 1-3, plus the updated picks are in, and we have to talk about a pretty controversial opinion about the upcoming 2025 NFL Draft. Please consider hitting that subscribe button and helping me hit 10,000 subscribers before the draft. Really helps me out. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much for being a part of my journey. It's super fun to talk about the 49ers. I don't have any friends out here that are 49ers fans, so it's a great time. But yesterday we talked about Brock Purdy ranking number 1 on go routes, but that wasn't the whole story. Warren Sharp then posted this tweet or post on X, and I didn't get to all of this. And then I want to come out of how this relates to the narrative around Brock Purdy in this contract in a second. Not for too long, because I know quarterback contracts and all that kind of stuff get kind of nasty in the offseason. But Brock Purdy ranks number 1 in go route accuracy and efficiency since 2023. Only 9% of attempts work incomplete due to inaccuracy. Number 1 in the NFL in that time. Here's his rank on go routes in the last 2 years. Number 1 in success rate, number 1 in yards per attempt, number 1 in completion rate, number 2 in EPA per attempt, out of 49 quarterbacks over the last 2 years. That's pretty fantastic. And look, the thing about the Super Bowl, like everyone gets all up in arms about it, but the thing about the Super Bowl is it's not about, we have to have that quarterback to get to the Super Bowl. Yeah, you know what? The St. Louis Rams did it with Kurt Warner, didn't they? Like, it's not about that. It's about what can you do with the guys that you have around you and who can you build around. And I believe that Brock Purdy is a quarterback you can build around. Over the first 40 games, by the way, this is from SF Data Niners reposting off that Warren Sharp post on X. This is Brock Purdy. Look at him just below, of course, Patrick Mahomes, who's had the most incredible start to an NFL career ever. But in his first 40 games, EPA per play, EPA through the first 40 games, Brock Purdy is up there as number 2 in the first 40 games, just ahead of Peyton Manning, because Peyton Manning's first season was pretty rough. But then you look, even guys like Tom Brady down at the bottom, Eli Manning, Joe Flacco, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers, who else is down there? Kirk Cousins, Dak Prescott, Tagovailoa, Andrew Luck, Justin Herbert. Andrew Luck's an interesting one, man. That guy, I could talk about that all day. The point is, even ahead of Lamar Jackson, like, no one's trying to say that Brock Purdy's better than all those guys, but we are trying to say that he's effective, right? He is effective as a quarterback in this league, and whatever you want to say, he's a system guy. That's fine. He still plays for Kyle Shanahan. Kyle Shanahan's still going to run Kyle Shanahan's system, so I'm fine with that. I don't care. Who cares about that? What I do think is interesting is how this relates to the growing, developing narrative around this Brock Purdy system or Brock Purdy contract negotiation. Okay, because PFF did an article talking about basically, like, I'm trying to look at my notes here. Like, what was it? It was what we learned, or biggest thing we learned from each team, something like that. Most telling narrative coming out of free agency for the 49ers per PFF is this right here. Brock Purdy, a long-term vision around Brock Purdy. It seems the 49ers are using this offseason to prepare themselves to build their roster around a massive Brock Purdy contract extension. That approach may see them struggle in 2025, though they still have a nice mix of stars and young players who could keep them in playoff contention. This is a prudent approach for San Francisco after the team contended for championships for the past half decade. Man, doesn't it feel good to hear that? It feels good a little bit. And then it's also like, yeah, but then never got over the line. So that's really interesting around Brock Purdy. We'll continue to try. I only try to talk about Brock Purdy if there's that kind of new stuff or new flavors coming out around him. But I want to talk about the controversial stuff now. Okay? Let's talk about the controversial stuff, because the post-free agency, week of free agency, mock draft stuff kind of popping up everywhere right now, it seems to have a huge disagreement about whether or not the 49ers should be addressing the line at pick 11 or whether or not they should be focusing on the secondary. Because I'm seeing a lot of people out there picking the 49ers, still picking the 49ers to go for a cornerback. And then I'm seeing a lot of people out there saying it has to be defensive linemen. Ideally, it's move up for like a Mason Graham defensive tackle, or it's take the best available edge rusher. That sort of situation seems to be what most people believe. Let's start with the first one, which is the pick by Daniel Jeremiah to go for Barron out of Texas, cornerback. Here's Niners Nation kind of quoted what Jeremiah said, but the 49ers defense has seen a lot of departures this offseason, including at cornerback. Barron is one of the most consistent players on tape among prospects in this year's class, and he can take the ball away. He'll be able to match up against some of the talented slot receivers in the division. Okay, so there you go. Kind of looking for a consistent player. And who doesn't want a consistent player on their football team? Like, that's got to be one of the most valuable things you can get out of a guy, is consistency, especially at the cornerback position, similar with the safety position as well. Consistent play is super valuable. Okay, so Larry Krueger had a thought about that, said Barron is a great player who often is comped to Brian Branch. The 49ers' number one need is great players at any position of need over a good defensive tackle or offensive tackle, which I think is interesting. There's a lot in that little tweet there, right? There's the idea that, one, what the 49ers need most is just great players. And so they need that's like kind of an old school best available kind of argument, right? Like they should just go for the best available player at a position of need. So if the best available player up is a quarterback, it's not your position of need. You go to the next position grouping. Okay, wide receiver. Do we need a wide receiver? No, we don't. Okay, we move on to the next position group, and here we go, right? Best player available in a position of need. I am fine with that idea. I'm 100% fine with that idea, except for one issue. The 49ers have left themselves in a position where they're drafting for need. So I don't know if they have the luxury of that classic best player available kind of methodology. So you have to let me know in the comments what you think about this one. But I think Barron is an interesting prospect, of course. I think it would be really interesting for the 49ers if they could find a guaranteed, lockdown corner. Like, obviously you do it. It makes sense because you never know what you might get. And you can put things together on the defensive line. My issue with not choosing a defensive lineman is the 49ers' insistence on a wide nine system means that they have to have the exact right guys in the exact right positions. It's not just a plug and play, throw big athletes there and they'll be fine. It really does require you to be a standout athlete at each of the four positions on the line if you want to be solid at the wide nine. We saw what the Philadelphia Eagles did this Super Bowl with a solid defensive line playing in that kind of a format. It only works, though, if you have all the guys. And we know that because we've seen several years now of the 49ers being absolutely terrible at stopping the run. It has only gotten worse. And I think you're seeing guys like Javon Kinlaw gone. You're seeing DeForest Buckner. There's been a lot of dudes that have left that defensive line from the Robert Saleh days that are massively impacting. But we're talking about Barron. Let's go a little deeper on this one. John Chapman had some thoughts about it, saying that Barron is his number 7 player on the board. He does see him as an outside corner in the 49ers scheme who can play nickel and safety as well. One of the cleanest evals in this draft. So there's some excitement for you if you're on the cornerback train there. By the way, PFF, I got a couple things from PFF today. There's an article from PFF kind of talking about the biggest need in the draft for every single football team. And for the 49ers, they say the biggest need in the draft is cornerback. Charvarius Ward's free. We don't even have enough players to field a team with a defensive line. But yes, the biggest need is cornerback. I'm just messing. I'm joking. Charvarius Ward's free agent deal with the Colts left a large hole in the 49ers cornerback room. Former second-round pick Renardo Green had a very encouraging rookie season, and Deommodore Lenoir is a solid nickel cornerback, but San Francisco doesn't have many answers at the other outside cornerback spot. The newly signed Trey Brown is currently the team's best option, although he has earned a sub-65 PFF overall grade in reserve duty across his career. Michigan's Will Johnson would fit perfectly into defensive coordinators Robert Saleh's defense at number 11 overall, which is another guy that we've been linked with many times in mock drafts. So let me know in the comments. Do you feel like the 49ers should be going after a cornerback? Do you feel like the 49ers should be going after a defensive lineman? or offensive lineman? Or do you feel like the 49ers should just be going at best player available in a position of need? Let me know in the comments. I look forward to your takes on that. I think it's a juicy conversation, but we do have to talk about the other side of the argument because I did kind of present it as what most mock drafts post free agency have been coming out with, these two options: cornerback position, defensive line position. Those are the two arguments. And this here, let's see here. What I was going to do first. There's an article from PFF on this one too. Sorry. So many PFF articles. For those of you that hate PFF, I'm sorry. But discussing the biggest risk for each team heading into the draft. And this is what they said about the 49ers. If the 49ers come out of the draft and they did not double up along the defensive line, that is the biggest risk for the 49ers going forward. Not long ago, the 49ers fielded one of the more impressive defensive lines in football, but as Robert Saleh begins his second tenure as San Francisco's defensive coordinator, that couldn't be any further from the truth. Nick Bosa remains one of the NFL's most formidable defensive linemen, but there's hardly any talent currently standing around him following the exits of Javon Hargrave, Malik Collins, and Leonard Floyd. In fact, besides Bosa, no 49ers returning defensive lineman totaled even 25 quarterback pressures last season. Most of them were depth guys, to be fair, but we'll keep going. San Francisco could use another dynamic edge defender as well as multiple effective players on the inside, and General Manager John Lynch would be smart to take one of each before the end of day 2. So he's giving you 3 days basically to make sure that you're picking interior and edge to fill the spot. A really, let's say, prominent reporter for the 49ers, Matt Maiocco, his opinion about what the 49ers are going to do is, I always carry it with a little bit more weight than I carry other guys' opinions like Daniel Jeremiah. I really like Mayoko's kind of insider look on all things 49ers, and he's been a fan for so long, and he's been covering the team for so long. It just feels like this guy knows. When he talks about, he knows. And he picked Jalen Walker out of Georgia, of course, and it just underscores for me this back and forth idea, this back and forth narrative of how do the 49ers approach this. And by the way, I am presenting this as two main sides because it seems to be either defensive linemen or cornerbacks right now coming out of the post-free agency mock drafts, okay? However, let's not forget there are still those who are arguing for an offensive tackle pickup, and there are still others screaming from the rooftops to take the best available player no matter what position it is. There are many of those that are just take the best player available, and it's that simple. And give Kyle Shanahan a guy like Tyler Warren. Unlikely, in my opinion now, with both Farrell and Juice coming back, I'm not sure that they can risk a first rounder, a top 10 pick basically, on a wild card skill position guy. But that's fine. Like, your opinion's your opinion, and we can have as much fun as we want because we are 36 days until the 2025 NFL draft. And I think this is going to be one of the most interesting drafts. I probably think this every year, if I'm honest, but this is going to be one of the most interesting drafts I've ever seen in my entire life. I cannot wait to see how the 49ers handle pick 11. I can't wait to see what happens in the first 10 picks and how the 49ers pivot, or if they pivot in any way based on what happens in the first 10 picks. I don't think they're going to be trading up. I could see them trading back. This is going to be such a fascinating draft. 36 days from now, you are not going to want to miss it. And please consider subscribing to the channel if you're interested in my takes on it. If you like my perspective, or you like the way that I cover and tell the story of what's happening, hit subscribe. It does very much help me out. Appreciate you guys. And I hope you guys have a fantastic middle of the week, hump day, Wednesday. You're already on to the weekend. It's already here. The weekend's already here.